Welcome to EdTech Live. This is Steve Hargadon. My interview with Nancy Willard on Internet safety took place on Friday, November 10th, 2006. It starts with Nancy giving a little background about herself. More interviews on educational technology are available at www.edtechlive.com.
Okay. I actually epitomize the statement, I believe, of not all who wander are lost, because I started in education as a special education teacher of children who had emotional and behavior problems, so children who are at risk. And I burned out, as many teachers working with that population do, and went to law school. And after I finished law school, in the 80s, I got involved in computer law. But I also got asked to come back to present to teachers on issues of copyright. This was in the 80s, and all these newfangled 5-inch floppy disks were coming into the school. I became much more interested in what was happening with technology and education, and so shifted to doing educational technology consulting and technology planning for schools in the 90s. And then in came the Internet, and there was a need for somebody who had an understanding of youth behavior, especially at-risk behavior, legal issues, and technology, especially technology in schools. So for over a decade now, I've been really strongly focusing on issues of youth risk online, especially how to manage that risk and how to help educate students within the context of schools.
So you really have a rich background.
I'm the only one I know of who is working on youth risk online issues that brings the background of actual hands-on work with at-risk youth, as well as the studies in that area, and law and technology in schools. And that helps me. It's kind of fun in the presentations I do. I kind of start off with, okay, now my adolescent risk hat is on, and then I shift to my lawyer hat and try to, and then I go into my planning and management and policy issues. How do we deal with these things? So it helps me do a song and dance through the issues.
So how would you characterize where we are today with the Internet and schools and youth?
I think that right now we are on a precipice of change that most schools are not prepared to deal with. And the emergence of the Web 2.0, both the technologies, is pushing this change. We have to go back a little, though, and look at some of the issues that have hampered the effective implementation and use of technology in schools. And I think there are a couple of key factors. First of all, as technology came into schools, it was at the same time that the No Child Left Behind Act was being implemented. And so necessarily the focus of school administration was on the NCLB requirements. And we got technology in schools through the use of the E-rate funds. So most districts ended up employing technology staff to manage these networks. The combined result of that was that there has been an insufficient attention paid to how are we effectively integrating technology into the schools to really help kids learn effectively. The NCLB is a standards-based, testing-based environment, and that environment is actually contrary to the kind of environment that you need to be able to foster the attention to creative, new instructional techniques. So we've had some incompatibility there that has been very unfortunate. The second issue has been the false security that has resulted from reliance on filtering software and the absolutely crazy idea that that we can effectively manage student internet use and prepare kids to make good choices online by setting up a system that's going to presumably block their access. I testified before the Children's Online Protection Act Commission in early 2000s and also National Academy of Sciences. I read to them from Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go, wherein it says, you'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not-so-good streets. So, we failed to focus on the strategies that are truly necessary to have kids use these technologies in schools and in a very effective manner. The foundation of those strategies is making sure that teachers have the professional development and that the curriculum development has been done to focus kids on really effective educational activities. And if you don't have that, then they're going to go off and play. Now we're in a situation where a recent study by the Kaiser Family Foundation indicates there's a 10% failure rate of filtering products. All you have to do is Google bypass internet filter, and you'll find out all of the different ways that young people can use to get around the filter. But that's not going to be the most defining issue. The defining issue that is now impacting schools is the handheld, wireless, personal digital devices that are increasingly becoming part of our young people's lives. What we've got going on in schools right now is that the schools are trying in vain to control student use of the internet through filtering systems on the school's computers. Schools disallow the use of cell phones in the classroom. But when a child comes in and says, well, yeah, it's got cell phone capacity, but it's my PDA, and I'm using it to take notes in class, but that PDA can also, totally outside of the school's filter, access the internet, download porn, ship some cyberbullying message to another student within the class, we have a whole new environment by which we have to focus on management issues. And I don't think schools are prepared to deal with this.
Boy, that's a lot to be concerned about.
You got it. Yeah.
What's intriguing to me is the degree to which we almost seem like culturally, we feel like our hands and feet are tied. And I experience this as I watch parents and teachers react and respond to very difficult situations. Part of it is because the kids know so much more about the technology than the adults do. Mm-hmm. And part of it seems to me to be related to the fact that we have a difficult time drawing boundaries in our culture currently. There doesn't seem to be a sense of agreement as to what are appropriate boundaries, so in the absence of agreement, there don't seem to be boundaries.
I see this very, very, very vividly at the middle school level. Okay, when you're addressing social networking environments, my daughter is in 7th grade. Last year on her U12 soccer team. U12 means under the age of 12. Okay, a good 2/3 of those girls had MySpace accounts with their parents' knowledge and approval, despite the fact that MySpace does not want middle school students on their service and does not feel their service is appropriate for middle school students. MySpace officials specifically said they could have allowed young people on at age 13 under the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. They specifically set the age of 14 to try to have this as a disincentive for middle school students. And when I would sort of, with some flabbergast in my voice, say, oh, well, why is your child on MySpace? Your child's not supposed to be on MySpace until they're 14, and that's what MySpace would really prefer. And the parents would say, oh, but all her friends are, and so she just wanted to be. Well, okay, it is possible to configure a MySpace profile in a way that can achieve some degree of privacy, but how do we deal? What are the appropriate boundaries here, and how do we deal with these situations? I'm actually now asking the social networking folks here, how can we set up a safer environment for middle school students and young people under the age of 11, which is challenging because of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, but these environments are clearly attractive, but you know, young people certainly don't have the brain development capacity to always make good decisions in these places. Now, what I say to a parent is, okay, you know, if your child is functioning in an environment like that, there is a possibility, we don't know how significant, but there is a possibility that your child will be contacted by a sexual predator who will be intent on sending overly friendly messages and grooming your child into some kind of a relationship. Are you ready, when your child is in 5th grade or 6th grade, to have a full and complete discussion with your child about sexual predators? And if you're not, then your child shouldn't be in that environment, okay? Bottom line.
It seems to me that we accept, and I feel the responsibility as a parent, that a large part of the job, my job as parent, is to help guide my children through understanding how to make decisions and how to approach circumstances and how to deal with things that take place. As a parent, one of the things that's so intriguing to me about text messaging and IM and the read-write web and social networking and even iPods is that a large part of what they experience day to day exists almost invisible to the parents.
Yes.
And it seems to me like the telephone used to be this great gatekeeping device. The phone would ring, we'd answer, who is it, who would you like to speak to? You know, darling, it's your friend,
who your friends
Joanne. You know,
right.
And so as the parent, I could say, is that somebody who's really helping my child, or, you know, can we talk about social issues related to that person who's calling? But now it seems like there's this whole back channel of information flow that the parents aren't even aware of, and that a lot of things that parents would want to be involved in and teachers would want to be involved in helping provide wisdom and guidance are just invisible. Right.
The analogy that I make, I have a book for parents coming out. It's going to be published in March. The title is Cyber Safe Kids, Cyber Savvy Teens, Helping Young People Learn to Use the Internet Safely and Responsibly. Now, consider that title real carefully, Cyber Safe Kids, Cyber Savvy Teens. That reflects back to what you just said. We have to keep younger kids safe because they simply do not have the capacity to make good choices. So we have to keep them in safe places with very simple safety rules. If something yucky comes up on the Internet, turn off the screen and come and tell me. Don't go outside the safe place without me. Or never type your name and address online. But as they move into early adolescence, we have to really focus on transmitting the knowledge, skills, and values that enable these kids to be savvy to make good choices online. And in my book, I discuss the fact that by age 16, hopefully your child knows absolutely everything that he or she needs to know in order to make these good choices. Now, what that gives is gives about 2 years of wiggle room before they leave home and go to college. But you're right about this invisibility kind of thing. Not only is this interfering with the ability of parents to pay attention to what's going on in their child's lives, it also is potentially negatively impacting how young people are making their own choices. I call this the you can't see me, I can't see you factor. Academic research has called this disinhibition. When we're using technologies, we are less likely to be inhibited by the real world sort of behavioral standards. Well, you can't see me is the fact that people perceive themselves to be invisible online, and that removes the fear of detection, which could be followed by either social disapproval or punishment. And we also have a situation where you're not getting tangible feedback about what has happened as a result of your actions. If you send a harmful message, you don't see the expression on the face of the person who has received that message. If you post pictures of yourself drinking at a party, you may be insensitive to what the consequence might be if your coach happens to look at those pictures. Okay, so there's the perception of invisibility and lack of tangible feedback is, I believe, impacting many young people and leading to behavior that we would prefer that they not engage in.
Or behavior that we would like to be able to help them understand the consequences of before it gets to the point where it's permanent. You know, the Wayback Machine has shown us that kids are putting things online that they are not really capable of understanding the consequence of their being online forever.
Well, with that area, then we have to go back to what do we know about brain research and what's happening within kids' brains during the second decade of life. And the brain research has demonstrated that the frontal lobe is undergoing massive redevelopment. I mean, it's almost like it's scrambling itself, and then it's really quite a fascinating development. The main activity that's going on within the frontal lobe is where we engage in ethical, reasoned decision making. So the place that enables, the part of our brain that enables us to do that is undergoing development, which means no teenager is going to be able to be consistent in making good decisions. They simply lack the hard wiring to do so. So then what we need to do is say, okay, how does one learn to make good decisions? Well, we learn to make good decisions by paying attention to consequences. If I do this, what will happen, or what has happened? Or if somebody else did this, what happened when they... The use of technologies is interfering with that recognition of the consequence, and therefore potentially interfering with the development of good problem-solving skills. However, there's a key there, and from an education, move on and say, okay, how can we deal with that in setting up for young people more effective teachable moments where we can get them to pay attention to the possible consequences or the actual harmful consequences that have occurred because of certain actions that were taking place. So our instruction, oh boy, I'm going to get started on that. Our current safety instruction for kids around internet safety is absolute nonsense. It is simplistic, fear-based messages that bear no tangible connection to what our kids are doing online. We tell young people, don't talk to online strangers. Well, excuse me, some of our young people are going to end up marrying someone who started out as an online stranger. We have to help kids. How do you reason through? You've met somebody online. How do you figure out whether that person is who he or she is saying, is trustworthy, is credible, and if at some point in time you want to safely. Those are the problem-solving skills that we need to help kids gain, and not just think that we're going to deal with the situation by saying, don't talk to online. I just did a presentation for the California Cyber Safety Summit, and I did it on sex and the Internet, and looking at some of the myths about online sexual predators. And quite frankly, most of what people think is going on with online sexual predation is wrong. There's a lot of things there. But I looked at both of the two Internet safety curriculum, iSafe and NetSmarts, and neither one of those curriculums in the middle school level uses the word sex in the instruction about online sexual predators. They call them online predators. They say predators want to meet with you to harm you, or predators want to form a special relationship with you. And then they say, if you ever receive a message that makes you feel uncomfortable, talk to an adult, to which I respond, if we as adults are so uncomfortable about talking about sex and sexual predators with our middle school students, how in the world do we expect that they're going to feel comfortable coming to us if some guy's hitting on him? It just doesn't make any sense. We really have to go back and really focus far more effectively on the education that will be necessary to help our young people engage in effective problem solving to deal with the reality of their world.
Nancy, is it just disinhibition, or what other factors are involved that would lead toward the study that showed recently that girls as early as 9 years old were actively talking about sexual things in chat rooms with others, or representing that they knew more sexually than they probably did?
There are a variety of factors. There's disinhibition. The you can't see me, I can't see you. There's the lack of brain development. Clearly a lack of parents paying attention to what their children are doing online. And unfortunately, I think that is grounded for many parents in the fact that they've slapped some filtering software program on the computer and now have this false security that they've protected their child. So we've got lots of parental lack of involvement of parents. We also have the factors of young people coming of age in an environment where all of this sexual garbage is just being thrown at them. I don't know if any, walk into Abercrombie and Fitch or Wetfield sometime and look at some of the slogans that are on the T-shirts there. I picked up a few of those the other day. One of them said, "No strings attached," "Innocent but willing to learn," "Meaningful overnight relationship wanted," "Good girls," "Bad girls chug, good girls drink quickly." It's adults who are promoting and in my opinion abusing our young people with the idea that this kind of stuff is appropriate. so we've got that going on. And then, it's what's happening online is that young people are exploring their identity and exploring their sexuality and trying to figure out who they are. And a lot of that they are now viewing within the context of their online presence. The whole phenomenon of how many friendship links do you have is very closely associated with what's your social status. Number of friendship links and amount of communication activity translates to your social status. And for kids for whom that is important, then there's an addictive factor, and there's an anxiety, and there's lots of activity it goes on in that area.
So as you're speaking, it occurs to me that there are two things that I've seen as a parent that have occurred in movies and media that maybe have a significant role here. One is, as a parent of girls, it sure seems to me like in the last 10 years, the portrayal of aggressive sexuality in girls has really significantly increased in TV and in the movies.
I also, as a parent of a 13-year-old girl, I thoroughly agree with this. And it's adults who are pandering those attitudes to our young girls, and it needs to stop. I mean, I was looking. My 14-year-old son is on MySpace, and we have concerns about young women posting sexually suggestive material on MySpace. But if you look at the ads that are on MySpace, I saw one for some fast food joint that was some contest of who do you think's most sexy or something like that. It's like, and this is on the site of a young person who's registered as a youth. So we've got advertisements that are coming to our kids that are simply promoting behavior that is unsafe and irresponsible. So it's a real challenge.
Well, the second interesting aspect of movies that's a little more subtle, and one that I find that I'm often, people look at me a little funny, but it seems to me as though movies portray, or at least in some period of time recently, so let's say the last 10 or 15 years, that adults are portrayed as sort of bumbling idiots, and it's the children who save the day. Now, have you ever seen that? I mean, does that occur to you as playing into this whole concept as well?
Yeah, so I'm trying to. Well, I was going back to Peter Pan, and the adults are portrayed as bumbling idiots there. So I'm trying to figure out whether this is a new phenomenon or or an age-old perception of parents, and I think maybe you and I had similar perceptions of parents when we were teens. I saw the greatest bumper sticker the other day. It's my primary job is embarrassing my middle school child, or something that, and I threatened to, so I'm
maybe not as strong a connection to you on that one.
Maybe not as strong a connection, but I do believe that there is I think young people perceive the online world as their world and really do recognize that we old fogies just simply aren't all that comfortable in the world. And okay, so and I'm going to bring up another. How do we translate that then into action plans to address the concerns of inappropriate use? And I think there are actually a pretty good portion of kids, especially older teens, who have some pretty good internet savvy. That is, they've figured things out. They come from families where they've got parents who maybe aren't paying as close attention to what they're doing online as they should, but otherwise are paying good attention to raising their children to have good values and make good decisions. And these kids are online, and they are also have good values and are making good decisions online. One of my son's friends is a young woman who has a great picture of herself on MySpace. It's herself on a rope course, and it communicates, guess what? I know how to take care of myself. So, we've got these savvy kids. They are our best resource to address the issues of the kids who might be either naive or vulnerable because they're going through some period of teen angst, which probably describes most teens at a point in time, or the kids who are really at risk. The teens who are in these places, if we can stimulate the bystander kinds of strategies that have been effective in dealing with bullying situations and in reporting school violence, if we can develop strategies to enhance the skills of savvy teens as effective bystanders to help communicate about these issues to their peers, I think that's one effective strategy that we can use. I was talking with a young woman, young girl, high school sophomore, and she was telling me that she had a friend who had started talking with some older guy, and from what that friend had said, this young woman was concerned. And she spent a lot of time talking with her friend and saying, hey, look, this is what this guy's trying to do, and this is what he's after. And she actually talked her friend out of continuing this relationship and communication. That's, I think, a really important strategy that we need to focus on in our educational intervention.
Is there a way to help parents who feel that world is so foreign to them that they just don't know even how to start or what to do? Have you seen any programs that have effectively addressed that?
Well, I'm hoping so. That is, I'm finishing up my 370-page manuscript of exactly that. That's the book that I have coming out in March, and the whole focus of that book is not on the technology stuff, but is really on the knowledge, skills, and values to support responsible online actions. And I'm going to have some other supplementary materials available for educators around these issues. I've actually already developed a 4-page, actually can be reproduced on 2 pieces of paper, handout for parents that contains the essential core guidance that is included in that 370-page manuscript, and on these internet safety issues that I'm going to make freely available to schools so that they can copy and provide this material to parents and use it in parent workshops and stuff like that. I'm also going to create a PowerPoint that schools can use for parents. But I went to a parents workshop the other day. Part of the difficulty we've got with the current instructional approach for parents is that it is largely guided by law enforcement. Now, law enforcement does a lot of good things right, but when it comes to these kinds of issues, they tend to have the ye old just say no approach, and here's all the scary things out there, and therefore you have to say to your child, just say no. This particular presentation, the sheriff's detective took a good 20 minutes to go through and show how, what he was saying, how a predator could take a little bit of information that a child is offered online and find out where that child lived and went to school. Well, all well and good. Maybe a few predators act like that, but in fact, the research has shown that most teens, all teens who, in one particular study, who were involved with an online sexual predator, went willingly to meet with that person, knowing that person was an adult and knowing that they were going to engage in sex with that person. So there's not any strong evidence that we've got predators who are trying to use these techniques that the sheriff's detective found so fascinating to find these young people. It's not functioning in that way. The people who are using those techniques are the commercial market profilers. So we have to get away from the simplistic fear-based rules approach to addressing these issues.
Is your parent handout available now?
No. Well, if somebody finds my email and writes to me, I'll send it to them, but I'm gearing up towards the website for my book. I just actually presented it at the New York Library Association and got it put together for that. But it will be.
Are there other resources that you like that you direct people to now?
Yes. The best resource that I know of right now is a website called Blog Safety, and it's blogsafety.org. Two of my favorite colleagues, Larry Magid and Ann Collier, who also have authored a book called MySpace Unleashed, which provides a lot of really excellent, how do you configure this, probably a little more technical than mine, and a really great little book on MySpace. They've set up Blog Safety, and Blog Safety is a place where parents as well as educators and other folks can go and talk about these issues. I'm actually going to be joining their Blog Safety community and setting up a blog for educators to discuss safe, responsible Internet use issues. But I've been in final stage of production of 2 books, and I basically haven't gotten to that yet. So that'll be something that'll be kicked into operation the beginning of the year. The other thing that I'm working on is developing an approach to offer virtual online workshops, one that will be specifically addressing cyberbullying and cyber threats, and another one that will be addressing the overall issues of youth risk online and looking at using technology that will allow me to present PowerPoint with a voiceover and allow people to have discussions in the back channel through a chat vehicle, and then we can, have question and answer kinds of periods. And I'm going to also be launching that in early 2007.
That sounds great. Aside from Blog Safety, any other places you point people to right now?
I think the people up in Canada, Media Awareness Canada, have some of the best educational material, best formulated kinds of guidance, and I like their site. I also like the Net Alert site, which is down in Australia. They've got some really excellent materials online, as well as ChildNet International, which is over in the UK, has some excellent resources. Those are the folks who I think are doing the best job from an educational perspective and on these issues.
Is cyberbullying real?
Yeah, cyberbullying is real, and it's causing some real damage. Cyberbullying is it's simply a translation of the kinds of aggressive acts that kids get involved in, especially in middle school, high school age, and translating this to the online world. As I said, a part of what's going on is establishment of identity, and unfortunately for some kids, that ends up with, trying to put other people down in order to build themselves up. Cyberbullying has both direct forms and indirect forms. The direct form is sending harassing email messages, text messages, posting comments on a site, on a profile, those kinds of things. Indirect has a whole interesting range of activities, some of which have occurred throughout time and some of which are real new. The creation of a We Hate Molly profile where everybody can post it's the translation of the slam book before, but now it's online. But also taking private messages or tricking somebody into communicating. The girls who get together on Friday night and for a party, and one of them starts IMing with a girl who wasn't invited to the party, and asks all sorts of questions to get that girl to disclose all sorts of personal, sensitive information, and then the IM transcript is blowing throughout school within hours. Or the kid who takes a picture in the locker room and it's immediately sent out. So there are ways that kids are collecting information and then disseminating it in very harmful ways. Also, impersonation is another way that young people will impersonate somebody else, either break into or get access to their email or create a profile that appears to come from a person who really doesn't. There was a child who had I was told in my local community, a girl who attempted suicide after somebody had broken into her email, sent out messages that had a thoroughly damaging impact on all of her friendships. And we are seeing cases of suicide, attempted suicide, and there was even one murder over in Japan that was associated with cyberbullying.
What about internet addiction? How real do you communicate that is?
Interestingly, I just did an online conference through a group of folks, and the people who were involved in this group are strong promoters of digital media. And I did a whole presentation on youth risk online, and the internet addiction or addictive behavior is the one point that all of these folks really kind of fired them up in the back channel communication. This is one of those virtual workshops. And it's kind of interesting to me reading through the comments because these folks probably also have some concerns of addictive internet behavior. There was a real important study, and I wish there was more funding so that we could study this more, but there was a study I read that was reported, came out of Korea. And they were looking at cell phone use, and cell phone is much bigger over there than actual social networking. Cell phone use of teenagers, I think it was boys, and they measured the amount of use as well as took measurements of these teens on social measurements on depression and social anxiety. And what they found was a significantly high correlation. The young people who made extensive use of cell phones to communicate with others also had higher rates of depression and higher rates of social anxiety. Now, correlation is not causation. We don't know what came first. But teens tend to differ in the degree to which they seem to be driven to maintain lots of social connections. My daughter is much more interested in her level of social connections with other students than my son is. He's quite comfortable with his smaller group of friends and really doesn't like to play the social games. So we know that going into it. But it seems that those kids who are really into maintaining these kinds of social connections can get into addictive behavior online. The other area where we're seeing lots of problems with addictive behavior is in the multiplayer role-playing online games. And the addiction there is really embodied within a lot of the features of those games, environments, so that you become a part of a guild and you're working with others to execute certain actions. And if you leave, you're letting your colleagues down. And there's a lost cause factor. If you play for a while and don't achieve a certain level, then everything you've done, you lose. So those two issues seem to be what's fueling the greatest amount of addictive kinds of behavior online. People in addiction research literature, you'll see underneath all addictive behaviors are other social kinds of problems, and so we need to be mindful of that. I suspect that internet addictive behavior is emerging as an additional cause of school failure. Because if you've got kids who are online till 2, 3 in the morning, then they certainly aren't getting a sufficient amount of sleep to be able to be successful during the day. And picking up a Red Bull on the way to school isn't going to compensate for that. And the other thing that we see that they're doing is they're media multitasking while they're trying to do their homework. So they aren't focusing on learning. They're trying to fit their learning in between their text messages and their IMing and comments and stuff like that. So that, I think both of those factors can interfere with effective education.
What about pornography and addiction?
Again, with all addictive behaviors, it's amazing because I was doing research on this for my book, and if you look underneath pornography addiction are concerns related to the ability of the individual to relate with other people. It's their own emotional stability as well as the quality of their social relationships and their social interactions. And if you have challenges in those areas, then those can then result in a range of irresponsible, unsafe, addictive kinds of behaviors. So we have to go to the ground. What is it going to take to raise kids to be emotionally stable and have good relationships? And then on top of that, we've got a variety of other kinds of activities. I mean, across the board, when you look into this, it goes down to social and emotional stability, and then on top of that, if you're angry and depressed and are being treated like an outcast, you may join up with a hate group. If you are sort of a nerdy kid and you're not fitting in and you don't feel like you fit in very well, you may end up in a hacker group. You have great technical skills. You're going to be, if you're a depressed girl who's engaged in cutting, self-harm, then you may end up in an online support group of other young people who are engaged in cutting. But underneath it all is this sort of lack of healthy social and emotional development that then manifests in different ways, just depending on the other attributes of the young person.
Most interesting. Nancy, would you like to give a plug for your internet site and resources?
Okay. My internet site and resources actually haven't been updated for a bit because I've been working on, and I don't recommend this as a life path, by the way. I've been working on 2 books simultaneously. An update of my cyberbullying and cyber threats book, which I originally published in February, that will be published in January by Research Press, and the title of that is Cyberbullying and Cyber Threats, Responding to the Challenge of Online Social Aggression, Threats, and Distress. And I do have a website addressing cyberbullying at cyberbully.org, or all you have to do is type in cyberbully as one word, and you'll find my website, the first one listed, which is kind of fun. The other website, which is CSRIU.org, the Center for Safe and Responsible Internet Use, I have to admit, has some pretty old stuff because I've been focusing a lot on the cyberbullying and then these other issues. The new site that will be up for my book is CSKCST.com. That's Cyber Savvy Kids, Cyber Savvy Teens.com. And that will not be coming on mine until probably until March.
You said Cyber Savvy Kids, but I think you meant Cyber Safe Kids.
Cyber Safe Kids, Cyber Savvy Teens, yeah.
Mets.com?
.com.
CST.com.
CST.com. And there's nothing there. It's a URL that's been purchased.
Well, maybe if in 6 months somebody's listening and they link on it, they'll go right to a brand new site.
They will go, hopefully, to a site that has a variety of good resources.
Nancy, thank you for taking the time, and thank you for being so proactive and interested in these topics and being willing to communicate so effectively about them.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about all of these issues. Obviously, I'm a tad bit passionate about those, so I really welcome the opportunity.
Thank you.